Okay, so this podcast is becoming a rant, a whining rant, really, of my misery, just like me vomiting up all my shit, because I really don't have anybody to talk to. I tell my family, I tell friends that I see a counselor. I haven't seen my counselor in like 4 months. I've gone to the sessions, but he was on vacation for a month, and then I had health insurance issues that stopped him from taking my I couldn't even pay a copay or anything, so I haven't really talked to anybody. And the counselor isn't specialized. He's not a grief specialist. He's a counselor I used to see years ago for recovery, addiction recovery. So, my state of the union is, so I started working at UMass. First of all, the biggest issue I've had since Ray died is money. Like, I didn't work the whole 15 months that Ray was sick. I don't regret it, because I got to spend that time with her. But it also, I had this dark cloud hanging over my head. Before we went to the Cape, I was working at UMass. Now, UMass is a decent job for a cook. It's a state job, so you get some benefits and stuff. But for a cook who's been doing it for a long time, it does not pay well. And the problem with working at UMass for me has always been I can't afford my life. It's not enough money to pay for my life. Like a very simple life. Pay the rent. I don't live with roommates, and I don't think life is worth it, really, to live with at this age. Like, I just don't want to live with a roommate. So UMass just doesn't pay enough. It pays bi-weekly, and the check's not enough. They take out union dues, they take out health insurance automatically, and they don't pay well. So, and it's also the difference between management and cook, and like cooking staff at UMass is, it's really poverty versus excess. Like, for what the managers have to do, I understand that they're supposed to manage a huge amount of people, but really the cooks manage themselves. They have head cooks that they refer to. The cooks don't need much managing. The thing about UMass is it is kind of cafeteria style, so there's no reason to pay someone $20 an hour or pay someone a salary. And but the trade-off for me is there's no stress. And when Ray died, I had taken a sous chef job for $38,000 a year, which isn't, for me, it's not terrible. Like, I think when you're a cook, a chef or a sous chef, and you're making, $60,000, $70,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, you're constantly worried about your job and someone cheaper coming along. Restaurants are famous for getting rid of heavy payroll for no reason, just because it's heavy payroll for the younger, cheaper person. So Ray and I were never planners, and so I had this dark cloud hanging over me. I'd gone back to school for art, which doesn't get you a job, and stuck as a cook, and not really happy in my life. The only enjoyment I really got was from cooking was during the years when I went to the Cape. Believe it or not, there was this cook, this sous chef named Chad. And in retrospect, when I look back at who did I learn the most from, or which place did I learn the most from to become the cook that I am today, which isn't saying much. I think I've maybe reached my peak, past my peak, and I'm on like a downward thing. My capacity to handle large amount of stress is not good. I have a bad temper, and I don't enjoy cooking. So there's this. I have like a real quick trigger, and after Ray died, my stress, my capacity to handle stress is diminished. So, but when I look back and I think about the people I learned the most from, really two people come to mind, and that's Chad and Daryl, and possibly more from Chad. He was a sous chef at the Papaneset Inn in New Seabury, and when I left Fitzwilly's, I was the kitchen manager. I was pretty much the sous chef, the second to the head chef who did nothing. So I basically did everything there, all the heavy lifting. He did mostly scheduling and not even ordering, really. He just did scheduling, inventory, cost. He didn't even do specials. So, that was back. I think I was 30 years old, 31, 32 years old. That was the peak of my ability. I felt like I was peaking at that level. I was starting to feel like a chef job wouldn't be out of the question. And, but really all I knew was Fitzwilly's. I'd been there for like 5.5 years. And before that I worked at McCarthy's Pub for 3 years, and before that I worked at a place called Piccadilly Pub. So I only knew pub food, and Fitzwilly's is kind of bistro style, a little lower end bistro style. And I really wanted to learn real cooking, or a higher level of cooking. I shouldn't say real cooking, because Fitzwilly's is still one of the most difficult kitchens I've worked in, and had the highest rate of turnover for cooks. There was so many cooks that came in who just couldn't handle it and didn't show up the next day. It's a very busy turn and burn style restaurant. But my dad was working at a country club on the Cape. This is when my folks and my brother-in-law and my sister owned a house on the Cape. And my dad started working at this country club, and I saw an opportunity to work with him. He said, it'd be great. The chef keeps asking, when's your son coming down? He kind of joked about it, but he wasn't joking, really. He thought it was a good idea. I think he thought I'd save money being out there. So me and Ray weren't doing well, and I was still a child, really. So my plan was, let's get out of here and go to the Cape, and maybe we can change our lives and look forward to a future or something. And so that's what I did. I moved out to the Cape for the summer to go work at this country club. First time working with my father. It was kind of magical. Like, the hours were available, lots of hours. The food was different. The steaks seemed a little bit higher than Fitzwilly's. They were higher. The cost, the product was a better quality product, and the steaks were higher. But the most important thing was, I was working with a different level of professionals in the industry. Like, those guys knew what they were doing. All of them. They knew what they were doing. They took their job seriously. They were not alcoholics or drug abusers, because there was a drug test, a severe drug test you had to take to work there. But there's a few guys. That first year I learned a lot from a guy named Damien, who's now the head chef of a yacht club in Marion. And he was just a hell of a line cook, a good leader, he was very smart, and he knew a lot about food. But the guy I kind of asked the most questions to, and the guy who didn't mind showing me basic things that he knew, and possibly the smartest guy there, was Chad. This guy Chad Ernest. And he took the job really seriously. He he really, I don't, he was it's funny because it's not like he made the job look easy. I just think that his skill level was pretty vast. Because that place did functions and it did a la carte, like public dining. So, and I watched him do both with no problem. Like, just the way he handled a knife, the way he would, his mindset for prep, his organization, and his sense of urgency was, he was the guy that I learned from the most. And, I worked at New Seabury 3 seasons, like a lot of hours, 3 seasons, and, and I just learned a lot from this guy. And the second season, a friend of mine came, and they made him work at the same place, but the country club. That club had 2 different restaurants, the Poppy and the Country Club. And they put this guy, Curtis, a friend of mine who came, at the country club, and he kept talking about Daryl. And Daryl was the executive sous chef of this place. And he just loved this guy, Daryl. And Daryl really liked him. And I kept hearing about all these things about Daryl. Chad had told me about Daryl. Daryl would stop in the Poppy sometimes. He seemed like a cool guy. And so my last season there, Daryl, after 12 years, left and went to the Ridge Club. It's another country club down the road, because he wanted to take his first executive chef job. It was a really good move, actually, in retrospect, because a few years later, New Seabury changed management and kind of let everyone go, including the head chef. Well, that year, another friend of mine came to the Cape and asked me if I knew any place he could work. This cook, this really talented cook, Sean, and so I asked Daryl if Daryl needed a cook at the Ridge Club. Daryl said yes, and my buddy went to go work for Daryl. And I visit them a couple times, and I realized, all right, I want to go work for this guy. So I left New Seabury and went to work for Daryl for a summer at the Ridge Club. And this is when my mindset changed a little bit. He was the most fun as far as management and bosses go and working for a chef. This guy was not only the most fun and good at managing people, I mean, the best at managing people, but his food knowledge was incredible. His ability was just, I just thought, I want to learn from this guy. Here's an opportunity to really learn from this guy. So I worked that season at the Ridge Club with him. And, the next season, or the season, two seasons after that, he opened this restaurant, Industry Ale House, and that's when me and Ray moved out there. And I continued to learn from Daryl. But, I wish I had learned more. I wish Rachel just wasn't a good fit for her. But, I don't know. I think I'm going to delete this. I don't know why I posted this.